How about some NBA, gentlemen? Kevin Love has 4 years and $93 million left in his contract, so some think Cleveland should consider trading him. As for the Cavs, though, they say moving Love is not even remotely a consideration, according to Basketball Insiders, even though there are no shortage of suitors who would inherit his contract. Stephen A., plain and simple, should the Cavs trade Kevin Love?
My answer is going to be no, believe it or not. Listen, do I think Love was worth the $113 million? No, I do not. I don't think he was worth that. I think he's a damn good player, though. I don't think that he's a scrub. I think that a lot of people, have been entirely too hard on him because there's a huge, huge adjustment that needed to be made in Cleveland. And obviously, that's going to take some time. He's not Chris Bosh. But Kevin Love is a 6'9", 6'10" body, rather, who can bang, who can step away from the basket and hit spot-up three-point shots. He didn't show that against Golden State, obviously. That's a potential matchup nightmare for him. We understand that. But by and large, over the course of an 82-game schedule, combined with having to go through the East, he's an above-average player. I think that last year was difficult for him. I think psychologically it was a tremendous amount of pressure that he was ill-equipped to handle. And from that standpoint, I think it's been cause for a lot of people, including myself, to jump all over him because there were times when he was completely anemic and absent and all of those things. But when you look at his skill set and you look at what other teams possess, Kevin Love is one of the better players in basketball. It's just that you're playing with LeBron and Kyrie. And Kevin Love is a guy that can't be on the court with Kyrie. He's best on the court with LeBron. That's where your problem lies. You might look at that as an excuse to bench him, but I'm saying, excuse me, you don't have to do that. He could be that guy coming off the bench. He could be that guy, that spark plug for you when one of those guys go to the bench. He's a guy that can rebound. He can bang. He showed a willingness to defend when the championship was on the line. And then you also have to ask yourself what you can get for him. Now, I changed my mind instantly. If you're telling me I can get Carmelo for Kevin Love, I'd absolutely do that if I was Cleveland. I wouldn't do that if I was New York, but I would do it if I'm Cleveland. If you're talking about Phoenix and you're working out a three-team deal that can get you an Eric Bledsoe from Phoenix or somebody from Boston along with Bledsoe to come to Cleveland, or a Melo and Bledsoe combination, that would be something special. And you lose Love for that. But just to jump ship with him and get rid of him because he serves no purpose, no. Last year was tough for him. There is no doubt about that, but he can play. He's not a scrub, and I wouldn't give up on him, especially now since he's a champion and you've got that pressure off your back, not just as an individual, but as a franchise overall. You've got that proverbial monkey off your back. Cleveland has a championship for the first time in over 52 years. I think that's a beautiful thing, and I think right now you're playing with house money. I think you roll the dice and keep it as is unless a marquee trade is out there for you. You don't just trade him for nothing.
Now, I've watched and read Stephen A. Smith on the NBA for years and have a tremendous amount of respect for you, Stephen A., just as you have said the same thing about me as it relates to boxing. But just like Stephen A. Smith loves him some boxing, I mean, you love boxing. You're a knowledgeable boxing fan. I love me some NBA basketball. And
yes,
if we can't go at each other about these subjects, we ain't got a show. So we got to go at this right now, with all due respect, of course. First of all, the history of the NBA has... they should trade Kevin Love. They should have already traded Kevin Love. That's been obvious. The history of the NBA has been... here are the arguments against it. History of the NBA has been... the team that gets the best player in the deal, usually, almost always, wins the deal. And in any trade involving Kevin Love, the other team is likely to get the better player because Kevin Love is an excellent player. He's not a future Hall of Famer, but he's an excellent player, offensive player. So there's that. There's also the idea that it takes a while to integrate pieces onto a team. And having gone to back-to-back finals, and this time having won, to trade him now and get new parts and integrate them and then hope to compete with the Warriors and Durant, in the finals, which looks extremely likely, is asking a lot. But I think it may be asking more to do it with Kevin Love. Kevin Love's major problem is defense. He gets roasted in the pick and roll, and this is a pick and roll league. So it's really an Achilles heel for the Cavs. Now, he does serve a purpose as a stretch four. He can rebound, etc. But there's an old Woody Allen line about this. It's like swatting a fly with a Buick. It's overkill. You don't need Kevin Love to do that job. You can find a much lesser part to do the job offensively that the Cavs need from him, and that same player very well may be better defensively. Let's take what the Celtics could offer. For example, Jay Crowder, a pat and stuff. You could probably get Jay Crowder, save money, and get other stuff. A Swiss Army knife player, which you can see, look at the Warriors roster in this NBA, is so valuable. A two-way player. You try to get Avery Bradley, too. If you can't, it's one or the other plus stuff. Another two-way player. They could bring in with LeBron, the best player in the world, and Kyrie, who really showed himself in this last finals. You got the penetration. You can find shooters. What you need is two-way, Swiss Army knife, players who can defend multiple positions, switch, all that stuff. In a league where Tobias Harris is now playing power forward, you bring in a guy like Jay Crowder, a few other pieces, I think it would be demonstrably better than what Kevin Love has done for that team so far.
Well, I think that when you say, well, first of all, I'm not disagreeing with that point because I do understand if you could get a Bledsoe and a Crowder for crying out loud, of course you do something like that. I'm just saying, of course you do something like that, and Crowder would definitely be a rough, rugged kind of dude that would fit in nicely with them defensively, energetically, etc. But he's not the shooter that Kevin Love is from the perimeter, and I think that it'll be a mistake to look at Kevin Love's performance, particularly in the finals, from a shooting standpoint, and think that defines his game. One of the things that I've been apprehensive about, Kevin Love deserved the criticism that he received, but it was for his performance, not his career and his overall game. His overall game is that he's a defensive liability at times, but he can rebound, he will bang, and he can step away from the basket and hit perimeter shots and keep opposing defenses honest more than most do.
Can I say a word about that, Stephen A?
In the game, and I just think that we need to sit up there. It's one thing to critique him and what he hasn't done in a particular series. It's another thing entirely to act like this brother can't play. Kevin Love can play.
I want to address that for a second.
And he deserves more respect than we've given him.
I think one of the reasons Kevin Love has become overrated is because a couple of years ago, he was considered a big. You know, you mentioned 6'9", 6'10". Out of shoes, this guy is 6'7" and change. He's not that big. So when a couple of years ago he was perceived as a big, he's like, wow, oh my God, he grabs all those rebounds on a losing team. Didn't defend very well then either. And shoots from the outside like that, 37% from three. That was unusual then. That's not unusual that much in this NBA. Lots of stretch fours out there nowadays, and suddenly if you don't perceive him as that big anymore, kind of just a slow three instead of a four who can shoot, what he does is not that special in this NBA.
That's not true. And the reason why, you got people trying to do that, but they're not necessarily successful doing that. The man averaged 16 and 10 on 36% shooting from, let me finish, 36% shooting from three-point range. And it was considered a bad year. Kevin Love can play. I'm not saying you hold on to him for dear life. I'm saying now that you're the champion, he deserves the cushion of going into the season and seeing what he's got. Because people who want him ain't going to stop wanting him because he starts the season with the Cavs. Pump the brakes on the summer. That's what I'm saying.
Gentlemen, we have to agree to disagree on that one. Last year was a challenging season for James Harden and the Rockets, barely sneaking into the playoffs with a .500 record. The Rockets' best player was also left off all NBA teams despite great stats. But when Harden's teammate Patrick Beverley was asked by Basketball Insiders what he expects from Harden this season, Beverley said, MVP and leading us to the finals. Simple. Stephen A., is Beverley correct?
Correct. They're not going to the finals, but let me say a couple of things. Patrick Beverley is one of my favorite players in the NBA. He is a pit bull, got the heart of a lion. He could play on my team any day of the week. He is hardcore. He gets after it. He defends. He's not an offensive player. He'll hit the occasional jump shot, make the occasional basket, but he's on there usually for defense and energy. He's as feisty as they come, and I'm sure he means what he says because he never looks at himself at being at a disadvantage coaching because, Max, I'm here to tell you, I know the kid personally. He is one of the true rough riders in the game. He doesn't have Russell Westbrook talent, but he has Russell Westbrook heart. Patrick Beverley is built like that. Let me get that out the way. Having said all of that, he's still wrong as hell. And here's why he's wrong. Because Mike D'Antoni's their coach. It's really that simple. Mike D'Antoni is a good man. He's a damn good offensive coach. Doesn't think about defense. I know people who've called him, my former partner called him Mike Antoni. Take the D out of the D'Antoni because there is no D in D'Antoni because his teams don't play any defense. You can't win if you ain't playing any defense. Now, some would sit there and say the exception would have been the Phoenix Suns because when Steve Nash, Amari Stoudemire, and all of those boys were there, had Robert Horry not hip-checked Steve Nash into the scorer's table, and then the benches sort of emptied, and guys got suspended, Phoenix would have won that series, went to the finals, blah, blah, blah. Well, damn it didn't happen. And in the end, when we look at this Houston Rockets team, I just think they're ill-equipped to compete for a championship. They're not relevant in the championship picture. When you look at Golden State, when you look at San Antonio, when you look at the Clippers, they're clearly the three teams to beat, and then there's everybody else. And if you're going to look at somebody on the outside looking in, I'm going to look at Oklahoma City because even though Kevin Durant is gone, Russell Westbrook, Steven Adams, Enes Kanter, and those boys are still there. Houston has James Harden, who is a superstar offensive player, fresh off of averaging 29, 7.5, and 6. This brother is legit. He's big time. He's an offensive juggernaut, no doubt about it. But the Houston Rockets are not going to be good enough to warrant him getting strong MVP consideration. Mike D'Antoni not going to play any defense, so you'll have an opportunity to shoot in 7 seconds or left, get the ball out your hand and jack up shots all day, which will lead to more points for James Harden, but that's not going to necessarily lead to more wins for the Rockets. It's not going to lead to championship relevancy, thereby not making James Harden that relevant in the MVP conversation. He's an MVP talent. He is big time. But the team collectively will not be good enough, and as a result, they won't warrant MVP. He won't warrant MVP consideration because they won't warrant consideration at all.
I think there's a very good chance James Harden can actually win the MVP this year. I think Patrick Beverley, who I agree with you, you gotta love the way he plays. He's so tough. He does get after it. If only James Harden cared as much about defense as Patrick Beverley cares about defense, he really would be a legitimate MVP level player. But the fact is he doesn't. He knows, everyone knows, the way you get paid in the NBA is to put up numbers. In fact, MVP voters in the NBA, not as bad as baseball MVP voters years ago, where if you had a lot of RBIs, they just give you the MVP, even if there were literally 10 players in the league better than you. Still, MVP voters tend to reward scorers and great offensive players, and James Harden can get to the basket and he can shoot the three, that's for sure. I want to get to Mike D'Antoni in a second, or right now, rather. He revolutionized the NBA, Stephen A. with the spread pick and roll, really exploiting fully the rules changes in the three-point shot. But when the rest of the league adjusted, and many adapted and adopted his parts of what he did into their own systems, like Greg Popovich, etc., and he didn't have an answer back, that means what he did, where you're like, my God, he's an offensive genius. If you have no answer once the league adjusts and starts doing you better than you do, then it's really like all you did was a parlor trick and everyone else figured it out. And one of the reasons I think D'Antoni hasn't had success since Phoenix, except briefly with Jeremy Lin, was in New York, is that he can't get his best players to buy in. Now, Carmelo's an ISO player. Kobe was an ISO player. Dwight had his own issues. James Harden's kind of an ISO player. I mean, he racks up some assists, but it's like the ball really sticks with him. And part of the job of a coach is to get your best player to buy in. You can't simply be like, oh, well, can't get the best guy to buy in. What can I do? No, that's your job as a coach to get that done. I think Harden is desperate enough right now, and D'Antoni is desperate enough right now, that it may actually be a good match because they'll have to meet each other halfway. I think the Rockets, given the bottom of the West, it's a great top-heavy conference, but the bottom leaves enough room for them to get in there. And Harden, as by far the #1 offensive option on his team, when you look at Durant and Steph going to split votes, when you look at LeBron, who takes his foot off the gas in the regular season because he saves it for the playoffs, he may not get as many votes as he really deserves, especially with Kyrie coming up the way he is. You start looking around the league, it very well may boil down to Harden and Westbrook because voters reward scorers, and so much of the offense of those two teams is going to go through those two guys. I think Harden's right in the mix, Stephen A.
But it can't be on mediocre teams, and that's exactly what Houston is going to be. Because how are you going to get two dudes with the same mentality moving? Meeting, equal ground or whatever. How are you going to pull that off? They're both on the offensive side of the ball. Now, if one focused on defense and one focused on offense and you met halfway, that would be different. But both of them have the same mentality. James Harden doesn't care that much about defense as a player, and D'Antoni doesn't care that much about defense as a coach. So how is that going to work? That means they're going to be juggernauts offensively, but defensively they're going to leave a lot to be desired. That's what it comes down to the Houston Rockets, not to mention the fact that they're not going to be that good in my estimation. I have nothing but faith in Beverly. I have nothing but faith in Harden as an offensive player. D'Antoni is going to put points on the board. They're going to play an exciting brand of basketball, and I think that Houston is to be respected in that regard. But defensively, as much as sensitive as Mike D'Antoni, is about that, and it's a shame because I can't stand being critical of him because he's such a nice man. He really, really is, Max. He really is a nice guy. But the bottom line is he doesn't give a damn about defense. And no matter what he says, his history, his resume shows that he does not give a damn about defense. He even incriminated himself when he was coaching the Lakers because he was getting mad at the media because the media talked about how he didn't focus on defense at all in practice. He said, "What are you talking about? I spent 25 minutes on defense." That's what he said. That's a quote, okay? I think it was 25
Stephen
or 30
A., I was
minutes.
calling him Mike D'Antoni from way back. There's no defense on, although his defensive efficiency is a little, it looks even worse than it is because there's so many possessions because he wants to score so fast. He's not quite as bad defensively as given credit for, but he obviously does not care very much about defense. I don't think that hurts his chances with MVP voters for Harden because the voters don't seem to care.
Stop. Bottom line. Coaches in the profession swear the man don't care about defense and knows very little about it.
We will leave it there.